Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday to you all. Welcome to this week's webcast. My name is Molly Proct, and I am your host, joined every week by Aduro coaches to touch on the different topics of life that we are all going through to help foster a sense of community and connectedness and resilience for all. And for those of you that are joining for the very first time, welcome. Many of you have been here in the past week, so I'll go through our few housekeeping items before we jump in. If you're unfamiliar, Aduro is a human performance company that exists at the intersection of well-being and performance. And amongst many things, we offer expert coaching and interactive content in order to really ignite company culture and build social connections, just like we're doing right now. And that helps us promote growth for all people. So a refresher of the logistics, you'll notice at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A feature, and we encourage you to utilize that feature in order to ask us questions that you'd like us to speak to or you'd like us to answer, you need some support around. And also, if you're comfortable, you'll also see the chat feature. And we encourage you to utilize that chat feature throughout the entire session to communicate, share your thoughts, share your noticings as we go through our discussion. You'll notice on the chat, you have an opportunity to select who gets to see it. So you can select if it's going to just the panelists, which is myself, and you see Elise here on the screen, or you can select if you want it to be shared to the entire audience and all attendees, which we encourage you if you're comfortable. And that allows us to build the community and for everybody to get a sense that we're all in this together. So joining me today, I am very excited. We have all the way from Georgia, Elise Drum. Welcome, Elise. Glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Molly.
Yes, today, Elise and I are discussing a topic that she has particular experience with as a military wife, and that is being prepared for the unexpected and having a really clear plan B. And so, Elise, when as humans, when we think about starting progress towards a goal or maybe a vision or an experience that we want, no matter what program or ideology we are utilizing, it seems that making a clear and committable plan with structure and process and timeframes, and this is exactly how it's going to go, seems to be part of the success in it. And so we all know that. We've all experienced that. We know how having a really clear plan can really help. But tell us how a crystal clear plan or one way of doing it can actually hinder us.
Yes, I have run into that many times. As Molly said, I am married to a soldier. So what I learned and what I would say is it really hinders us because for me, it put my blinders on. Like when we think about just having one plan, it absolutely can set us up for success, but it can hinder us by not being able to see what other possibility is out there. And, you're kind of putting all your eggs into one basket versus just seeing what other options could happen. And right now, right, no one thought this would happen. So we're all essentially living our plan B, whether it's education or meetings like this, and we're making it work. So it's kind of this is a perfect example to see how cool and amazing things can happen when we're not hindering or boxing in ourselves to one particular plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned something I think it's important to reiterate is that by having just one plan and one focus, it narrows your opportunity to recognize success, right? If you're looking at one way of it turning out. And a really easy analogy here, Elise, and you've experienced this in coaching for the last 4 years, is when people come in and they're really focused on the number on the scale, but they decrease 4 or 5 pant sizes, but that number on the scale doesn't shift. They eliminate the success in noticing the pant size changed, and they're recognizing just that number on the scale. And so I like how you point out that not only does it narrow our way of completing something, but it narrows our ability to notice success, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think, when we were throwing around this topic of how we were going to talk about it, you point blank were like, what's the best thing that happens? And I was like, presence and celebrating my wins, because it's really showing me all that little stuff that would have otherwise gone unnoticed. I'm like, ooh, that's cool. Ooh, that's cool. And it's really fun to be able to see that when I'm not so laser focused.
Right, absolutely. And like you mentioned, it can take away a bit of our control in the overall situation. And, having multiple different scenarios to achieve something or to even experience something like this isn't necessarily a goal, but also just our experiences allows for universal preparedness that we can, apply to any shift or any change. And so I think it's safe to say that many of us on the line, and again, please utilize that chat feature to chat in what's coming up for you through this. But I know that I can think of many experiences that the original framework or the original plan, the original experience that I had built up in my head did not go as expected, or something came up that created a shift or a quick change of plans. And my initial response to that sudden change or that abrupt problem sends me into this frustrated, disappointed spiral of thought. And that really does, if I'm being honest, it impairs my ability to shift to a plan B or to look at a new option or a new avenue. And that can hold on for a while, whether it's a couple hours, a couple of days. I hold on to that frustration around this is not going how I expected it. And this seems like hopefully I'm not alone. One, and two, it might be human nature to this, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you're kind of alluding to the fight or flight response, right? And by thinking about a plan B, or if I'm being completely honest, in my life, there's usually an A, a B, a C, D, E, F. So there's lots of options, but that helps me mitigate my stress response and the fight or flight. We were also talking, Molly was out hiking and this past weekend, and she saw a snake, right? An obstacle, a proverbial obstacle in her path, right? And she was like, oh my gosh. But then she said her and her daughter got a little closer. It was dead. But they were like, oh, wow, this is kind of beautiful. And it was like this really cool learning opportunity. And our lives really aren't any different. It really, what I have found, and I am a self-proclaimed planner, and I like to be in control. And I'm admitting that out loud for all of you. Don't tell my husband, but I like to be in control. So it really helps set me up for success and to mitigate that massive swing in emotion of like that stress and frustration that you're feeling, to really bouncing back with resilience and resourcefulness to say, okay, well, I have all of these paths that I created and these ideas, one not so important, more important than the other, or not to diminish the importance of another, but they all lead to the same outcome. And so it really puts me in this awesome state to have those backups to be able to say, okay, well, we can still make this happen. We might just have to switch gears a little bit. And it's honestly not any, I mean, we all drive somewhere, right? It's not anything different than changing lanes, right? If someone's slow, if there's a blockade, right, you're just going to put your blinker on and move over. And that's really how I view my A, B. Last year I went probably down to the EF area. We had some situations we had to account for, but it really helps. And I see some people chatting in, it definitely resonates. Taking a step back, someone said, and asking themselves how they can look at it in a different way really helps us out. And I love how she said it takes them out of the initial sadness of plan A, right? Because it can be abrupt and jarring when that first plan doesn't go right.
Yeah. And I think it's an opportunity too to recognize how you typically respond when a plan doesn't go that initial way. What is your go-to feelings or emotions when there is a sudden change or a sudden alteration? And I love how you mentioned it in terms of fight or flight. And the snake thing, yeah, we were hiking and I noticed a snake, what I thought was a snake. I don't like snakes. I'll do anything else besides snakes. So it was a massive, am I going to die or am I going to live here? It was the fight or flight, the classic fight or flight that many of us went through if we lived thousands of years ago. And when I realized that it was very much deceased, then all of a sudden the fear of, am I going to die, went away. And I no longer had to ask myself that split question of, what do I do? Do I run or do I stay and fight? But then all of a sudden plan B came, and that came on curiosity, and it came on beauty and perspective. And even though this, the snake is a different story, but even though in our day to day, we no longer have those daily encounters of things that could potentially kill you, we still, like Elise, you mentioned, have this natural response to question, how bad is this? Like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to get through this? And I think it's important to recognize that that doesn't make you necessarily a pessimist, or that doesn't make you opposed to change. It actually makes you human in this, right? So identifying how you normally respond to a sudden shift or a sudden change, perhaps, Elise, can help you recognize, hey, I'm noticing I'm frustrated and angry right now, and I'm going to take it out on everybody around me. There's a plan B that I can notice, or there's a plan B that I can start to create awareness around, right? And it allow you to get excited over a shift in an event or a shift in the calendar ahead of you.
Absolutely. And look, this is still taking practice for me, but I want to reiterate again, like that swing in emotions, right? That fight or flight, because where I used to be, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? What am I going to do? And probably similar to what many of us felt when the news in February and March started to come out, right? You're feeling like your back's against the wall, things like that. But now, instead of being like, oh no, what am I going to do? I find myself like that easily changing lanes. Like if I were to put motion to it, it's like, okay, all right, let's see. I know I have something I've talked about over here, or I have something in my back pocket over there. And it just it allows me to flow back and forth. And what I'm noticing is that freeze, someone chatted in, freeze, freak out, come to my senses, put it in perspective, right? For me, again, I'm not perfect, but as I've practiced this over the 4 years of my relationship, that space in between has really gotten a lot smaller. That swing is not as big, and I'm able to really bounce back a lot quicker.
Absolutely. Weeks ago with Coach Jansen, I believe, and then we touched on it again with Coach Erica, and I feel like every week, Elise, in the last couple of weeks, we've touched on this opportunity to get really aware of how you're feeling and notice the swing in emotions. Notice how you're feeling, name that emotion. And this is no different, right? Being able to name and prepare for, I want to feel this way, and here's A, B, C, and D, and E, and F, of how to make sure that I'm gonna feel this way at the end of the day, and I'm gonna succeed in this. And you mentioned that earlier, is it allows us to succeed in more ways than one, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the real cool thing about it, again, I can't believe I'm saying this again. Really, guys, do not tell my husband, but I do like to be in control. And I find that it really does set me up for success. And Molly, we talked a little bit about this. So a little like snippet, an example of how I put this into practice, like with my life, with my husband, Zach, being in the military. We have block leave coming up, which is they can vacation twice a year. And, it's like, okay, well, what's going to be open? As a member of the DoD, are we going to be able to have a travel ban lifted so we can go somewhere? Well, what if stuff isn't open to go to? And, well, what if I need to go to a doctor's appointment, or like all of these different pieces come into play. And this is just an example. And I know everyone out there on the line can have some kind of relatability to it, but this is kind of how I approach each of those scenarios. Is like, okay, well, the overall outcome we're trying to achieve is going on vacation or having some time to ourselves, right? And enjoying that free time. So however I achieve that, it can be up for debate. Okay. Like maybe my plan A is, we want to go to this place and do that. But maybe plan B is like, okay, we can't leave the state. So what can we do in the state? Plan C, okay, we can't leave the house. What are we going to do in the house? And how can we make it more fun? And that kind of go from there. And for the people who like to be in control, now I'm like, cool, I now have various successful options that I took control of that made me feel good to say, okay, I'm going to set myself up for success. And I am happy with any one of them and however they turn out. And
Mm.
that's been really fruitful for me to be able to bounce back and regulate those swings that we talk about as bumps come up in the road.
Yeah. And I like how you mentioned that. And I would imagine for you, you've learned to control how long those swings take to get back from one area to another. And um, uh, audience member chats in and she says, you know, sometimes it can take weeks and it doesn't need to. It can take weeks to get back to a place where you feel resilient, where you feel in control, instead of taking maybe a day or two, depending on the situation. And when Elise and I chatted about this earlier in the week, we wanted to recognize and acknowledge a lot of the events that had a lot of expectations and lifelong dreams, whether you have someone you know that was supposed to graduate this year, or maybe a wedding that either was canceled or postponed. But these events that we're hearing about across the country, that even a plan B or plan C look a lot different than the original expectation. And Elise, you were speaking to, like, it can still be special. We can still appreciate and have the joy and have the excitement in those really big moments that maybe are lost for some people, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we also talked about the magnitude of the event, right? Like, you know, to your point of these different things, and that really hits home for us, right? My brother is supposed to get married in August. That's not going to happen. And so we're navigating through that, and we're just seeing, you know, it doesn't diminish the magnitude of the event, right? Like for those that are graduating, right? You're surrounded by your loved ones, you're going to get your diploma, and how that looks is undoubtedly going to be memorable. And from personal experience, and Molly, I don't know if this resonates with you either, but when I look back on plan C's or F's or whatever I had to execute to actually make it through something, I don't remember the pain or the discomfort or the frustration. It created a new memory. It kind of implanted itself. And right now, this is just Elise knowledge. There's no scientific backup, but we'll see. But in my mind, right, you look back and it's like, okay, well, my brain is choosing to say, oh, wow, that's outside of the norm, right? Having a parade of people celebrate your graduation past your house is a little bit outside the typical norm. Or having a wedding that was on Zoom, right? Like that's going to be different than the norm. So it's going to implant yourself, and you're going to look back one day. And that's how I look back on some of my previous experiences, as being like, that definitely didn't go how I planned, but the alternative actually seemed pretty amazing and pretty memorable, and I'm never going to forget it.
I love that perspective. As we look into the future, as we start to wind down, everyone, I'm sure, has calendars that there are either events that are on there, it just like you said, in August or in the fall or in the winter, and even going back to school if you have kids, and who's going to go back, when are we, etc. Being able to take this and put this into action, Elise, and from your experience having multiple plans, what can we start to think through? What can we really walk away from today with that can set us all up for success as we flip through the calendar and notice that we do have some pretty exciting, fun experiences or events that are coming up that may or may not go exactly as we expected them to?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to first, just before we even think about looking into the future, I just really want to hammer home that just because myself, or what we're encouraging you guys to do with a plan B and a plan C and a plan D, is not in any way trying to create hassle or diminish the chances of your first plan happening, or maybe creating this thought of like, okay, well, I'm just going to assume plan A isn't going to come to fruition. That is not our intention here, to diminish that. It's really to empower you and to set you up for success. So if you do see those things coming up on your calendar and you do look up, what I would hope that you would take away is how powerful you can feel when you take the reins of your own life and think about different scenarios. And I touched a little bit before about the magnitude, right? Like some things like graduations, right, could feel so overwhelming to think about what that would look like. So maybe start something really on a small magnitude scale in our house is whether Zach's going to be home for dinner or not. right? I either plan for two or I plan for just me, right? That's really small and manageable. And then you have like some of those things that go in the middle. And so take it, for each person, it's going to be different. Take it in stride, but know that when you're kind of thinking some of those things through, you're in control. You have the power. And the great thing about that is you can look back and go, okay, well, look at these 3 plans that I've created. All 3 are awesome and they're all going to lead to the same outcome. It's just how I get there. And I hope that you guys all take that away and that becomes really useful in thinking about what the events are coming up on your calendar in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I love how you point out that, plan A doesn't have to diminish or be any less important, I think, right? And this essentially, and you mentioned this a few times, Elise, allows you to broaden your perspective and broaden your ability to recognize success in so many multiple ways. And I can think back on my experiences too, is sometimes there's a little bit of plan A and then there's a lot of plan B and there's plan C that didn't even, we just kind of threw out the window. But overall, I think the opportunity is, as we run into certain events and now, especially through the pandemic, where depending on where you are, what state you're in, there's news and there's noticing of things are going to start to open. Will I be able to go to this event that I have in the end of June or July? And you're starting to really recognize that some things might happen, some things might not, and we don't really know yet. And so what a perfect opportunity to take the next month or 2 or 3 into account and look at what you have. And instead of just crossing off your entire calendar like I did in April, and I looked at my April calendar and not a single thing happened in my April calendar. And I look at I look at the upcoming months and I'm like, I hope I can do this, or I hope I can do this. And what does that look like? Instead of just waiting to just say, nope, it didn't happen, I'm going to delete it entirely. Start to develop what the alternative may look like, may feel like. So then when it comes to it, you're excited no matter what, right?
Yeah, I love how you said that, because instead of being like, oh, I hope this happens, then it becomes, oh, I hope this happens. But if not, that, and then I can do that. And then if not, and especially if you have little kids, right? Like, we're coming into the summer months, get them excited. And it doesn't feel like so much as a letdown for them if, you can't go to the museum or whatever that situation maybe. I like to think of it, life is always going to throw us curveballs. So I would rather be in control of the curveball and how the end result's going to be than feeling like life and the curveball is controlling me. That's my own personal perspective, because for the 3rd time, we know I like to be in control.
Absolutely. And I think control over so many different options is the opportunity. And I think it's amazing to realize what we can do and what we do have control over, and also recognize what you have done so far in the last 6, 7, 8 weeks that we've been in this. We are all in our plan B or a plan C. We are in the middle of the doing it phase of this, and realize that sometimes when you have no choice over your plan, your initial plan, you're gonna find yourself in the middle of the doing it of a plan B or plan C, whether you want to embrace it and take it on or move through it with resistance. So I love that. Elise, as we wrap up today, any other pieces that you want to encourage our audience to walk away with? Anything else as we wrap up?
Yeah, I saw a great question come through that made a nod to something we talked about earlier with, not taking weeks, but maybe being able to take a day or two. And they asked, what are things that I did to adjust my mindset, so I'm not fretting over them for weeks. And really that was taking that control back and creating that opportunity, because I feel like we talked a little bit before about human nature, right? We always want something to look forward to and it looks different in everyone. It's many different facets, but we always want something to look forward to. So by creating these different opportunities and creating these backup plans, or not even backup plans, because you want any one of them to work, but like just alternatives or options, you can think of them as options, right? If you think about that, then I feel in my experience, I'm less likely to fret over it not working because I was excited about all the options that I had, right? It's kind of like going to the movies and like there being like 3 movies out that you want to see. So it's kind of like toss a coin. I'm going to be happy with any one of them. And so for me, that's been really helpful in not drawing out the sadness or frustration or emotional swing we spoke of, to be able to put myself in a resourceful mindset and say, hey, I have this backup plan. I'm ready to go. I have this other option that's going to be just as cool. So hopefully that's something that you guys can take away and kind of get creative and fun with it, because we're all living life and we're all writing our own story, and no story is better or worse than the other, or it's all different and it's all amazing, and you get to be the writers of that. So I say more options. More options for fun.
More options for fun. Absolutely. Elise, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'll tell you what I'm excited for. I'm excited for next Thursday. We hope you join us next week as well. Thank you so much, Elise, again. You have a wonderful rest of your day. And to everyone, have a wonderful rest of your week. Stay well, stay safe, and we will see you next Thursday. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye, everyone.